Mr. President, last week in both the House and Senate, legislation was introduced to increase the Secret Service protection for presidential and vice presidential nominees. We all know why this legislation is needed. In the span of just 65 days, President Trump, our former president and the Republican nominee to be the next president of the United States, has been the target of 2 assassination attempts. In Butler, Pennsylvania, President Trump was shot in the head, but miraculously was spared from death. Unfortunately, Fire Chief Corey Comparatori was killed by the assassin's bullets, and others were gravely injured by his gunfire. It didn't happen again in my home state of Florida. It is thanks to the incredible work of President Trump's Secret Service detail that another would-be assassin was unable to take a shot at the president while he was golfing with friends. We know that day could have ended much differently. We thank God that these attempts have not been successful. But each of these events have reminded the nation of the dangers surrounding President Trump and the need to make sure he, his family, and those around him are safe. That's why I introduced the Protect Our Presidents Act here in the Senate, and Representative Mike Lawler and Richie Torres introduced the Enhanced Presidential Security Act in the House. The safety and security of those seeking to lead our nation should never be in jeopardy and should be applied regardless of party. That's why these bills ensure all presidential nominees, both now and in the future, are provided the enhanced protection they clearly require and deserve. On Friday, the House passed Representatives Lawler and Torres' bill in a unanimous vote of 405 to 0. This unanimous vote shows that when common sense and desperately needed legislation comes before Congress, we can act quickly to do what the American people expect of us. I am proud to lead this effort in the Senate. I'm on the floor today to request the immediate passage of the Enhanced Presidential Security Act so we can send this good and necessary bill to President Biden's desk so it may become law. Mr. President, our action today goes beyond the simple language of this bill to increase the Secret Service protection for our party's presidential and vice presidential nominees. Passing the Enhanced Presidential Security Act today with the unanimous consent of the Senate sends an important message to the American public and the world that we will not ignore these threats, which are truly an attack on our democratic process and have rightly shocked the world. I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of H.R. 9106, which was received by the House and is at the desk.
The clerk will report.
H.R. 9106, an act to direct the Director of the United States Secret Service to apply the same standards for determining the number of agents required to protect presidents, vice presidents, and major presidential and vice presidential candidates, and for other purposes.
Is there objection to proceeding to the measure?
Mr. President.
Senator from Connecticut.
Thank you, Mr. President. Reserving the right to object, let me make it clear that I share Senator Scott's concern, deep concern, that the recent attacks on former President Trump's life have made it clear that there are security gaps in his protection. What happened in Butler and Palm Beach was unacceptable, and it cannot be allowed to happen again. That's why this week Congress is coming together, poised to pass a continuing resolution that I hope the Senator will support, that will give the Secret Service $231 million in additional funding to provide the agency with the authority to spend money at a faster rate so that they can meet their mission, and their mission is zero fail. I'm the chairman of the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee on Homeland Security, which is charged with funding the Secret Service, and I'm proud of the quick work that we have done to identify the funds that can be spent between now and the election and between now and the inauguration to make sure that any gaps are closed. The reason that I rise on this particular bill, though, is because I don't want to promise the American public more than this bill actually delivers. This bill says that the Secret Service shall use the same standards for determining the number of agents required to protect presidents, vice presidents, and major presidential and vice presidential candidates. Now, that may sound meaningful, but in reality, my sense is that that is current law. Right now, when the Secret Service makes a determination on the provision of protection, it is assessing the protectee's life, their work, their travel patterns, the potential threats, and the risk of harm to that person. The standard that the Secret Service uses is to provide whatever protection level is necessary to meet that zero-fail mission, to protect the person under their charge. With a team of experts, the Secret Service determines the level and the type of protection that is needed. That's the process, and those are the existing standards. And let's be clear, commanders-in-chief, presidents of the United States, do have certain unique requirements regarding their protection. For instance, the Department of Defense is supplying a traveling commander-in-chief with certain capabilities, chiefly amongst them the ability to stay in contact with our nuclear triad and communication assets necessary for the president to be in seamless communication with the Department of Defense and military command should a crisis arise. That is a unique set of capabilities that a commander-in-chief has, and it goes into the assessment that the Secret Service makes as to the level of protection that the commander-in-chief needs. They are using the same standard, do whatever is necessary in order to protect the life of the protectee, but commanders-in-chief, because they are commanders-in-chief, have a different constellation of assets that surround them that mean that the standard gets applied accordingly. So I'm not actually going to object. I'm not sure that this bill changes anything about the way that the Secret Service approaches their mission. They are going to continue to do whatever is necessary in order to protect the detailee, to protect the individual under their mandate. And I think the much more substantive thing we are going to do this week is to get them the resources that they need. And my hope is that all of my Republican colleagues who have been talking about the importance of Secret Service protection are willing to support this increase in funding that the continuing resolution will include. But I would end by expressing my additional hope that we will seek to have a more holistic conversation here about how to protect former President Trump, how to protect President Biden, how to protect Vice President Harris. I'm ready to move forward with this bill. I don't think it does anything to meaningfully change the way that the Secret Service approaches their job. I'm ready to move forward on additional assets. But we also continue to choose to give weapons of mass destruction to assassins. Other nations around the world don't choose to hand weapons with such accurate long-range capabilities, such powerful destructive force to these assassins whose brains are breaking. We also have a constellation of actors in this country that are engaged in a web of conspiracy theories. There's a justification of political violence that exists in this country today. Apologies for those people that tried to kill us, attacked us on January 6th, that leads many others to contemplate that they will also be let off the hook for their acts of political violence. And so I take the protection of former President Trump and Vice President Harris and everyone under Secret Service protection very seriously. Let's move ahead with this bill. I don't think it actually solves the problem. Let's pass the additional money so that they have everything they need, the Secret Service, in order to get the job done. And then let's sit down and have a broader conversation about why we have seen this spike in political violence and what other ways Republicans and Democrats can come together. Only by having that comprehensive conversation about funding, about the lethal means of assassination, about the celebration of political violence that happens in this country, will we really do the job that is necessary and help the Secret Service reach their zero-fail mission. With that, I yield the floor.
Is there objection to proceeding? Without objection, the Senate will proceed.
I further ask that the bill be considered, read a third time and passed, and the motion to reconsider be considered, made, and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I want to thank my colleagues for their support of this common sense legislation, which has now passed with unanimous bipartisan support in both the Senate and the House of Representatives. I will continue working with my colleagues to ensure our nominees for President and Vice President are never in jeopardy and are provided the enhanced protection they clearly require and deserve. This bill will now go to President Biden's desk, and I hope he acts quickly to sign it into law. Thank you, Mr. President.